After years of believing his wife had died in a tragic accident, Jack Thompson dedicated his life to rebuilding his shattered family. But everything changes when, during a trip to the beach, he sees her alive with another man. Determined to confront her, Jack plunges into a web of lies, betrayals, and crimes that will once again put his family in danger. How far will he go to protect his children and uncover the truth? That's what you'll discover in today's gripping, twist-filled story. Jack Thompson had always been a model of dedication, the kind of man who put his family's happiness above everything else. Living in a quiet neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, his life followed a simple yet fulfilling rhythm. Sunday breakfasts always included pancakes, a tradition he and his wife, Emily, started when their children were still little. Ethan, the eldest, was a curious boy and a talented pianist, while Lily, the youngest, was a spirited and energetic girl who loved drawing the world as she saw it, always colorful. As a construction foreman, Jack spent his days on site, facing tight deadlines and extreme weather conditions. The work was exhausting, but he always found time and energy for his family. At night, when his calloused hands rested from the day's labor, he transformed into a storyteller. The kids loved hearing his tales filled with adventures and magical worlds, often improvised as Jack tucked them in. Emily was the perfect complement to Jack. A university professor, she was organized, practical, and intelligent. Her presence at home balanced Jack's chaotic life and provided the children with a solid structure. Emily was the heart of the family, always present at school meetings, Ethan's piano recitals, and Lily's art exhibits. Although their routine was demanding, Jack and Emily always found moments for themselves, dancing to old songs in the living room or planning the vacations they dreamed of taking someday. This harmony, however, was irreparably shattered on an April morning. Emily was scheduled to travel for a work conference in Denver. It was a routine part of her career, but this time felt different. Before leaving, she hugged Jack with an intensity he found unusual, but didn't question. After giving the kids hurried kisses goodbye, Emily got into a taxi, waving from the window. It was the last time Jack and the children saw her, or so they thought. The call came the following night. Jack was on the couch helping Ethan with his homework, while Lily was busy coloring in her room. On the other end of the line, a cold and bureaucratic voice informed him that the plane Emily was on had crashed. There were no survivors. The words pierced Jack like a blade. He dropped to his knees, his trembling hands clutching the phone. How could he explain this to the kids? How could he accept it himself? The days that followed were a blur of grief and formalities. There was a funeral, even though no part of Emily's body had been recovered. Friends and family gathered to offer support, but nothing could fill the void. Lily couldn't sleep without hugging her mother's favorite sweater, while Ethan withdrew, abandoning the piano he had once played with so much love. Jack, for his part, threw himself into an exhausting work routine to avoid the weight of Emily's absence. Even so, life found ways to continue. Jack took on both roles, mother and father. He learned how to braid Lily's hair for school events and to listen to Ethan's concerns, even when he barely had the strength to face his own. Gradually, they formed a unique bond, built on sacrifice and love. Jack set aside his own dreams and needs to ensure his children had what they needed, even if it meant working double shifts or sleepless nights. The bond between the three became unbreakable, forged in pain and resilience. 6 years passed. Ethan was now 18, a disciplined and focused young man with dreams of studying law. Lily, at 15, had channeled her creative energy into painting, filling the small apartment they lived in with vibrant artwork. Emily's absence still lingered, but they had achieved a hard-earned balance. Jack was proud of how they had moved forward, despite everything. Then the family's routine was shaken by an unimaginable event. It was a summer afternoon in Virginia Beach, where Jack and the kids had decided to spend a few days to escape their usual routine. The beach was a place Ethan and Lily always loved, a chance to laugh, swim, and leave their worries behind. Jack was sitting under an umbrella, watching his children play in the water, when something caught his attention. At first, it seemed like a mistake. His eyes must have been deceiving him. But as he focused again, Jack felt his heart stop. It was Emily. She was just a few yards away, walking barefoot along the sand, laughing as if she didn't have a care in the world. Beside her, a tall and elegant man held her hand. Jack froze. He blinked several times, trying to convince himself it was a coincidence, a woman who simply resembled his late wife. But it wasn't just her appearance. It was the way she tossed her hair back, the laughter he knew so well. It was Emily without a doubt. Shock gave way to a wave of intense emotions, confusion, anger, and an overwhelming need for answers. How could she be there alive when he and the children had spent years mourning her loss? And who was the man by her side? Jack followed his instincts. He stood up abruptly, but hesitated as he thought of Ethan and Lily. How could he explain what he was about to do? He decided not to call them, but kept his eyes fixed on Emily as she and the man walked away. In the minutes that followed, Jack trailed her along the beach at a safe distance. He observed how she interacted with the man, laughing and holding his arm with intimacy. It was like watching a stranger, but his gut told him it was her. When he finally found the courage to approach, she looked back and saw him. Emily's eyes froze for a moment, reflecting the same shock he felt. But before Jack could say anything, she grabbed the man's hand and hurriedly walked away, entering a nearby restaurant. Jack stood there, feeling the weight of everything this meant. The woman he loved, the one he had mourned for years, was alive, and now he needed to know why. In the years following Emily's death, Jack Thompson became the embodiment of resilience. As a construction foreman, his job was grueling and demanding, but he found solace in the rigorous routine as a way to keep his mind occupied. Every day began early. Jack left the house before sunrise, driving his old truck to the construction site, where he coordinated teams, solved problems, and dealt with tight deadlines. He was respected by his crew, known for his impeccable work ethic and his policy of never asking others to do something he wouldn't do himself. Yet, while Jack maintained the appearance of a man in control, the void left by Emily was an invisible wound he carried everywhere. In the silence of his resting moments, reality struck him like a blow. He blamed himself for not questioning the trip, for not noticing any signs that something was wrong. And although he knew rationally that he wasn't at fault, the feeling persisted. His personal life was a carefully choreographed routine. Jack took on every responsibility with unwavering dedication. He learned through online tutorials how to manage the household tasks that Emily had once handled, preparing the kids' favorite meals, doing the laundry, and even sewing on missing buttons. In Ethan and Lily's eyes, he was an indefatigable hero, someone who sacrificed everything for them. However, raising two children on his own came with immense challenges. Ethan, now 18, was a quiet but brilliant young man. He had inherited his mother's artistic talent, but chose music as his medium of expression. Before Emily's death, he was passionate about the piano, spending hours playing in the living room. After the tragedy, though, he abandoned the instrument. Each note felt like a cruel reminder of the past. Despite this, Ethan was disciplined and determined, dreaming of studying law, a career he believed would allow him to make a difference in the world. But there was a side of Ethan that Jack couldn't reach. The young man rarely spoke about his mother, burying his emotions in silence. This distance worried Jack, but he respected his son's need for space, hoping that time would bring healing. Lily, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of emotions. At 15, she was a teenager, brimming with creative energy and a passion for painting. Her canvases, often vibrant and abstract, captured her unique perspective on the world. But in the early years after Emily's death, Lily's paintings were dark, filled with shadowy tones and indistinct figures, as if her pain was spilling onto the paper. Jack did everything he could to encourage his daughter's creativity, investing in art supplies and applauding her school exhibitions. Despite her vivacity, Lily struggled with insecurity. Her mother's absence had left deep scars, and she often wondered if it was somehow her fault. Jack tried countless times to convince her otherwise, but her doubts lingered. Amid these challenges, the family found a fragile balance, upheld by Jack's tireless efforts and the strength of their bond. Evenings at home were devoted to simple dinners and casual conversations. Though there were occasional bursts of laughter, Emily's ghost was never entirely absent. Despite accepting Emily's death as fact, there was something that always unsettled Jack. It wasn't uncommon for him to wake up at night, drenched in sweat, with images of the plane crash haunting his mind. Although he never voiced his doubts, he felt there was something about the official story that didn't sit right. It began with a call Jack received a few months after the funeral. An insurance officer asked him to confirm details about Emily's life insurance policy, mentioning that a significant payout was about to be issued. The man's tone over the phone was indifferent, but it unsettled Jack. He hadn't known Emily had taken out such a generous policy shortly before her trip. He found it strange but chalked it up to her work, which often required precautions due to frequent travel. Still, certain things didn't add up. Emily had always been organized, and Jack knew her habit of sharing important details about their finances. Why wouldn't she mention something so significant? He filed the doubt away, trying to ignore the growing discomfort. Then, months after Emily's death, Ethan found something in her closet. An unused plane ticket. The ticket was for New York, not Denver, and was dated just days before the tragedy. Ethan showed it to Jack, who was disturbed, but once again tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a previous trip she forgot to mention, he thought, but deep down, he knew it wasn't normal. Another strange occurrence happened when Jack received unexpected mail addressed to Emily. It was an approved credit card sent from a bank where, as far as he knew, she had never opened an account. He tried calling the bank, but privacy policies prevented them from sharing details. He discarded the envelope, telling himself it was likely an administrative error. Although these incidents fed a latent unease, Jack kept them to himself, perhaps out of fear of seeming paranoid, or because he didn't want to reopen old wounds. He needed to focus on his children and had no time for conspiracy theories. But there was one thing he couldn't ignore: the dreams. Jack often dreamt of Emily. In those dreams, she wasn't dead. She appeared smiling, but there was always a distance between them, as if something was keeping them apart. Jack woke up feeling unsettled, sometimes even feeling as if he were being watched, but he dismissed it as his mind trying to fill emotional gaps. Even the children occasionally mentioned situations that made Jack pause. Once, Lily said she was sure she saw her mother in a crowded mall. Jack laughed it off, saying it was impossible, but Lily's serious expression lingered. Though small, these incidents carried weight, like scattered pieces of a puzzle. Jack didn't know how to put them together, and perhaps a part of him didn't want to. After all, accepting any explanation other than Emily's death meant confronting possibilities he wasn't ready to face. As time went on, Jack learned to live with these doubts. His priority remained ensuring Ethan and Lily had the support they needed, but when he saw Emily on the beach in Virginia Beach, everything he had tried to suppress came rushing back like an avalanche. The woman he had mourned and loved for years wasn't just alive, she appeared to have moved on. The initial shock gave way to a simmering anger and an unrelenting need for answers. How could she abandon them? How could she leave him to bear the burden of everything alone, raising Ethan and Lily without an explanation? These questions consumed him in the days following that encounter. He knew he couldn't let it go unanswered. He needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Jack knew he had to act, but the whirlwind of emotions made it hard to think clearly. In the days following his sighting of Emily, he found himself torn between disbelief and rage. There was no denying what his eyes had seen. The woman he had mourned and loved for years was alive, laughing as if she hadn't left behind a shattered family. He tried to make sense of it, but the anger always won. Everywhere he looked, he saw reminders of the sacrifices he'd made to support Ethan and Lily alone. He thought of the sleepless nights, of Lily's tears as she clung to her mother's sweater, and of Ethan's deep silences, which spoke louder than words. Emily had chosen to disappear, and now Jack needed to know why. After days of indecision, he gathered his courage and returned to the restaurant where she had entered with the other man. He asked the staff about the woman and discovered that the couple was staying at a nearby luxury hotel. It wasn't the kind of place Emily used to go. The simple life they had built in Columbus was a far cry from this display of opulence. Jack parked outside the hotel, his hands trembling on the steering wheel, his mind racing with questions he didn't yet know how to ask. When he finally decided to go inside, the concierge tried to stop him, but Jack managed to slip past with fiery determination. He climbed the stairs to the room he'd been directed to. He didn't know what he would say, but he couldn't wait any longer. Every second felt like an eternity until, at last, he knocked on the door. Emily answered, her expression a mix of shock and fear. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She looked younger than he remembered, as if the years had been kind to her while they had brutally weighed on him. Jack, on the other hand, was a picture of weariness, his face lined with exhaustion, his eyes hardened by sleepless nights and grueling days. "Jack," she murmured, her voice faltering as if his name were too heavy to bear. "Don't say my name," he cut her off, his tone low but seething with anger. "You don't have the right to do that." She stepped back, opening the door just enough for him to enter. Jack stormed into the room like a soldier entering a battlefield, his eyes scanning the luxurious space. There were wine glasses on a table next to a bouquet of fresh flowers. He turned to Emily, searching her face for something that could explain the unexplainable. 6 years, Emily. 6 years thinking you were dead, mourning you, struggling, trying to fix what you broke. And here you are, living this lie. How could you do this? She lowered her eyes, seemingly unable to meet his gaze. "Jack, I can explain." "Explain," he exploded, his voice finally rising to the level of his fury. "You faked your own death, abandoned your children. They cried for you every single day. Lily still sleeps with your sweater, Emily. Ethan stopped playing piano because every note reminded him of you." She recoiled, visibly shaken by his words, but tried to compose herself. "It wasn't that simple. I did what I had to do." Jack laughed, but it was bitter, filled with disbelief. "What you had to do? That's your excuse for abandoning your family?" Emily took a deep breath, struggling to remain calm as she began to speak. "It wasn't my choice, Jack. James..." She hesitated, as if saying the name made everything more real. "James Parker. He found me months before that trip. He said he knew things about us, about your company, your past, things that could hurt you and the kids." Jack narrowed his eyes. "And you believed him? Just like that?" She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "He showed me documents, proof that he had the means to ruin our lives. He told me the only way to keep you safe was for me to disappear, to fake my death and go with him." Jack stared at Emily in silence, trying to process her words. As much as he wanted to believe there was something forcing Emily to do what she had done, his mind couldn't ignore the gaps in her story. "And you never thought to tell me? Never thought we could face it together?" he asked, his voice now quieter but still laden with hurt. She looked at him with a silent desperation. "I was afraid. He said if I told you, you'd all be in danger." Jack shook his head, his disbelief turning to anger again. "You're telling me this man, James Parker, forced you to leave, to live in all this luxury? You seem pretty comfortable for someone who was forced to do this." Emily took a step closer, but Jack backed away, raising a hand to keep her at a distance. "You don't understand what he's capable of. He's destroyed other families, Jack. He manipulates people, controls everything." "And you?" Jack interrupted, his eyes blazing with fury. "You're telling me you had no choice, but you did. You always did. And you chose this. You chose him." Before she could respond, the door opened, and the man Jack had seen on the beach walked into the room. He was tall, well-dressed, and exuded an air of absolute control. It was James Parker, the man behind everything. "I think it's time for you to leave, Jack," Parker said, his voice calm but laced with menace. Jack stepped toward him, his fists clenched, but Emily moved between them. "No, Jack, please don't do this." Jack looked at her, his eyes burning with a mix of pain and rage. "You chose this. Don't ask me for anything else." He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him, his heart pounding in his chest. As he descended the hotel stairs, one thought consumed him: Ethan and Lily. How would he explain what he had just discovered? When he returned to the house where they were staying, Jack found his children in the living room. Lily was painting while Ethan was reading a book. Both looked up when he entered, immediately sensing that something was wrong. "Dad, what happened?" Ethan asked, closing his book and standing up. Jack tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Finally, he took a deep breath and sat down. "I need to tell you something. About your mother." Lily's eyes widened. "About Mom?" Jack nodded, his voice heavy. "She's alive." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan was the first to react, shaking his head. "What? That's impossible." "I saw her. I spoke to her, and she's with someone else." Lily dropped her paintbrush, her eyes filling with tears. She abandoned us." Jack didn't know how to answer. He wanted to protect his children, but he knew that the truth, as painful as it was necessary. "Yes, she chose another life." Ethan clenched his fists, his face turning red with anger. "How could she do that to us, to you?" Lily began to sob, and Jack pulled her into a hug, trying to comfort her as his own pain surged. The revelation had shattered something in them, but Jack knew this was only the beginning of a much larger confrontation. He needed to uncover the full truth about Emily and James Parker, not just for himself, but for his children. This time, He wouldn't let any questions go unanswered. Jack felt his blood pounding in his temples as his feet carried him into the restaurant in Virginia Beach. Each step felt heavier than the last, but anger and shock propelled him forward. He spotted Emily sitting at a table in the corner with the man who had been by her side on the beach. The smile on her face disappeared the instant her eyes met Jack's. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. He could hear only the sound of his own heartbeat and feel the heat of indignation rising in his chest. Emily stood abruptly, and the man beside her, whom Jack later learned was James Parker, looked confused, trying to understand the sudden shift in her demeanor. Jack stopped in front of her, the weight of unsaid words pressing on his throat like stones. He didn't know what to say first, but his glare said it all. Emily tried to speak, but Jack cut her off. "How could you do this? How are you alive? How could you abandon us?" His voice was hoarse, laden with a mixture of hurt and rage that he couldn't contain. The man next to Emily, Parker, stepped between them, as if trying to shield her. "Friend, I think you're mistaken," Parker said, his voice calm but authoritative. That only enraged Jack further. He stepped closer. "I'm not your friend, and I'm not mistaken. I know this woman better than you ever will." Jack's tone made Parker step back slightly, while Emily, visibly shaken, tugged at Parker's arm, urging him to back off. "Jack, please," she said, her voice low but tense. "Can we talk outside?" There was something in her expression, guilt and fear intertwined. Jack hesitated for a moment before nodding, his eyes never leaving her. Parker looked at Emily as if seeking permission to intervene, but she shook her head, signaling that she wanted to handle it alone. Outside the restaurant, the sound of waves crashing on the shore created a surreal contrast to the storm raging inside Jack. He stared at Emily, waiting for her to explain the inexplicable. She seemed smaller, almost shrinking under his gaze. I can explain, Jack," she began, her voice trembling. "I didn't have a choice." Those words were like gasoline thrown on a fire. "No choice? You're alive. You faked your death and left us to suffer. You think I'll accept that as an excuse?" Emily tried to stay composed, but her words came out fragmented, as if she was piecing together a narrative as she spoke. Parker, he forced me. He threatened me. He said if I didn't go with him, he'd hurt you. He knew things about us, Jack. He knew where we lived, everything about the kids. I did this to protect you." Her explanation, though laden with emotion, felt hollow to Jack. He shook his head, incredulous. "You expect me to believe that? That you disappeared to protect us, while living a life of luxury with him?" Emily reached out for Jack's arm, but he pulled away. "Please try to understand. I didn't have a choice," she insisted, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I thought about you every day. It was the hardest thing I've ever done." To Jack, her words were an insult to the pain he and the kids had endured for the past 6 years. He interrupted again, his voice filled with frustration he could barely contain. "You thought about us while sleeping in 5-star hotels, while walking along the beach holding his hand. Emily, you have no idea what we went through. I buried you. I held Ethan and Lily as they cried for you. And you were here, alive." Emily began to sob, but Jack couldn't bring himself to feel pity. He needed answers, and he needed them now. "Who is this man? Why is he with you? Why are you here smiling while our lives were destroyed?" Emily hesitated before answering, as if weighing the consequences of every word. "James Parker. He's a businessman. He pulled me out of the life I knew. I didn't want this, Jack. He told me if I didn't go with him, he'd do terrible things to you all." The mention of Parker's name ignited a new level of fury in Jack. "James Parker. That's the name of the man who bought you. Because that's what it looks like, Emily. It looks like you chose a life of comfort over your family. You replaced me, replaced our kids with him." Jack's voice rose with each word. The image of Emily laughing beside Parker on the beach mocked everything he thought he knew about her. Emily tried to justify herself again. "I regret every decision, Jack. I know it was a mistake, but I didn't know what else to do. He's dangerous, powerful, and he made me part of things I can't undo." Jack frowned, the weight of her words hitting him. "What kind of things?" he asked, unsure if he wanted to know but compelled to press her. "What did you do with him?" She averted her eyes, unable to meet his gaze. "Parker, he's more than he seems. He built an empire on fraud, money laundering, extortion, and I helped him. He forced me to be part of it. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd ruin you." Her confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Jack stood silent for a moment, trying to process what he'd just heard. It wasn't just the fact that Emily was alive, it was who she had become. A willing participant in a criminal empire, all while her family struggled to survive without her. You did this. You worked with him. You destroyed other families while ours was falling apart. Jack felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. Emily began to sob again, but Jack had no room for compassion. I did what I thought I had to do to protect you, she insisted, but her justification felt meaningless against the enormity of her actions. Jack didn't know how he could face the kids with this truth. How could he tell Ethan and Lily that their mother not only abandoned them, but chose to become part of something so dark? He could already picture Ethan's expression, the disbelief in his eyes. And Lily? How would she cope with this revelation after years of idealizing Emily as someone unjustly taken from them? As Emily continued to plead for understanding, Jack took a step back. He needed to get away. You left us, Emily. There's no excuse for that. And now you expect me to fix this? To carry the weight of your choices? No, this time you'll deal with the consequences. He left her standing there on the sidewalk as he walked back to the hotel where Ethan and Lily were waiting, unaware of the storm that was about to tear through their lives. Lily spent the days following their return from Virginia Beach in turmoil. Jack had told her everything he had discovered about Emily, though he initially hesitated to share the most painful details. He thought he was protecting his children, but Lily pressed him until he broke down and revealed the truth. Ethan listened in silence, his fists clenched, while Lily cried, her wide eyes brimming with hurt. Their mother was alive, but she had chosen to abandon them and ally herself with a criminal. The news devastated them both, but while Ethan retreated into a heavy silence, Lily reacted differently. She couldn't stop thinking about Emily's justifications. The idea that Parker had threatened and manipulated her to protect them deeply unsettled her. Was her mother just trying to survive an impossible situation? Or had Emily truly chosen wealth and comfort over her family? The doubts consumed Lily daily. Jack tried to talk to her, but Lily, usually open and talkative, now seemed enveloped in a quiet determination. Without telling anyone, Lily made a decision. After weeks of research, using social media contacts and websites that tracked residency records, she located an address in London that seemed connected to Emily. There were few clear clues, but enough to convince her that she needed to see her mother for herself. On the morning she decided to leave, Lily wrote Jack a note explaining her decision. She chose her words carefully, trying to minimize his worry. Dad, I need answers. I need to see her with my own eyes and understand. Trust me, I'll be fine. I'll be back soon. Love, Lily. Jack found the note too late. When he tried calling her, she was already on a flight to London. Reaching the address was challenging, but Lily was determined. It was a small apartment in a modest neighborhood, far from the bustling city center. When she arrived at the door, she hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorbell. For years, Lily had fantasized about reuniting with her mother, but now that she was about to see her, fear and pain weighed heavily. Would Emily open the door? And if what Jack said was true, what would Lily do then? Taking a deep breath, Lily rang the bell. The sound echoed through the quiet entryway. Seconds later, footsteps approached from the other side of the door. When it opened, Emily appeared, visibly surprised and, for a moment, frozen in shock. Her eyes took a moment to focus, but when she recognized her daughter, a mix of emotions crossed her face. Guilt, joy, fear. Lily, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Hi, Mom. Lily's voice was tense but steady. She didn't know exactly what she expected, but seeing the woman she both loved and resented made her feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. Emily stepped back, holding the door open. Come in, please. I can't believe you're here. Lily hesitated for a moment before crossing the threshold, taking in the small apartment. It was modest, almost bare, lacking the signs of wealth Jack had described. Seated at the kitchen table, the two stared at each other for a long moment before either spoke. Emily was the first to break the silence. I never thought you'd find me. I never imagined I'd have this chance to see you again. Lily clenched her fists on her knees. Chance? Chance for what? To explain? To tell me how you chose another life over us? Her voice rose involuntarily, years of hurt spilling over. Do you know what it was like growing up without you? I searched for you every night. I cried. I idealized you as a victim, Mom, and now I find out you were alive, living your life while we were suffering." Emily lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. "You're right. I don't deserve forgiveness. I've made terrible mistakes, Lily. But please believe me, I never stopped thinking about you. Every day I was away was torture. I didn't choose Parker because I wanted to. I thought it was the only way to keep you safe." Lily let out a bitter laugh. "Safe? Safe from what? You left us to live with a criminal. How was that keeping us safe?" Emily swallowed hard. "I thought if I didn't go with him, he'd hurt you. He knew everything about our lives, our routines. He threatened me in ways you can't imagine. I did everything he asked, but over time, I realized I was just as trapped as you were. And that was it? You just accepted it? And now you're here, hiding, while we deal with the wreckage." Lily's voice was sharp, but beneath it was pain. She wanted to understand, but the answers weren't coming easily. Emily took a deep breath, wiping her tears. "I ran away from him, Lily. It was risky, but I couldn't be part of what he was building anymore. I helped Parker hurt other families, destroy lives. The guilt, it consumed me. I knew one day I'd have to face what I'd done." Lily stared at her mother, trying to process her words. "Then why didn't you come back? Why didn't you come to us and explain everything?" Emily hesitated. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd never forgive me. Afraid Parker was still watching me. And because I didn't know if I had the courage to face you after everything." Lily stood abruptly. "You should have had courage, Mom. For us. For Ethan. For Dad. He did everything for us when you left. He buried you, cried for you, and you didn't even try to fix it." Emily broke down. "I know, Lily. I know how much I hurt you. That's why I hid. But if you're here, maybe it's a sign. Maybe it's time to do what I should have done a long time ago." Emily's words sparked a glimmer of hope in Lily. Despite everything, she still wanted to believe her mother could change, that she could at least face the consequences of her actions. "Then prove it, Mom. Come back with me. Face Parker, help bring him down. Maybe you'll never earn our love back, but at least you can do something right." Emily looked at her daughter for a long moment, before finally nodding. "I will. I'll come back with you. I can't undo what I've done, but I can try to make it right now." Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders, but she knew this was only the first battle. Convincing Emily to return was just the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous. Parker was still a threat, and the path to redemption would be fraught with obstacles, but Lily was determined. She would fight not only to save her family, but to ensure Parker and others like him paid for what they had done. When Emily stepped through the door of Jack's small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, the silence was almost deafening. Jack sat on the couch, his hands resting on his knees, while Ethan stood by the window, staring outside, trying to mask his anger. Lily entered first, carrying a small suitcase Emily had brought from London. The tension in the room was palpable, as if everyone was bracing for an explosion. Emily stopped in the middle of the room, hesitant, the weight of her guilt evident in the way she gripped the strap of her bag tightly. Jack was the first to break the silence. He stood, his eyes fixed on Emily. "So, you came back after all?" His voice was harsh, devoid of any warmth. "I don't know if I should give you credit for that or wonder what you're scheming this time." Emily couldn't meet his gaze. "I came because Lily asked me to, because she made me realize I can't keep running. Not after everything." Ethan finally turned around. His expression was cold, calculated, almost unrecognizable to Emily. "You're not here because you care about us. You're here because you've got nowhere else to run." His words cut through Emily like a knife, but she knew he was right. "I deserve that," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I'm not expecting forgiveness, not from any of you, but I can help fix at least part of what I've done." Jack crossed his arms, his face skeptical. "Fix it? How exactly? Do you have any idea what it means to fix this? Because the kids and I have spent years dealing with the fallout of what you did, and now you think you can just show up with a solution?" Lily stepped in, her voice steady. "She has evidence, Dad. Stuff that can take Parker down. She can do it." Jack glanced at Lily, his expression softening for a brief moment before returning to Emily. "And then what? Do you think taking down Parker erases everything? Do you think that solves what you did?" Emily took a deep breath. "No, Jack. I know it doesn't erase anything. I know it doesn't fix everything. But I can't keep hiding while he keeps destroying other families. I can testify against him. I have documents, transactions, names, everything he tried to keep buried. I just need a chance to give it to the authorities." Jack nodded slowly, though the anger in his eyes remained. "And what are you expecting out of this, Emily? Redemption? Justice? Because honestly, you don't deserve either." Ethan let out a dry, humorless laugh. "She thinks this will make us forget. Forget how she chose Parker over us. Forget the nights Lily cried herself to sleep. Or when I had to give up piano because I couldn't play without thinking about her." Emily closed her eyes, each word from Ethan weighing heavily on her. "I know I can't change the past, but I can help build a future where he doesn't hurt anyone else. And if that means facing justice myself, then I'm ready." The room fell silent again, until Jack finally sighed, running his hands over his face. "Fine, let's do this. But know that I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for my kids because they deserve to see that bastard pay for what he's done, and because deep down, I still believe the truth should win." In the days that followed, Emily began organizing the evidence she had brought. Her small laptop contained hundreds of files detailing Parker's illegal operations, financial records of money laundering, fraudulent contracts, and even correspondence involving blackmail. Jack watched from a distance, still unable to fully trust her, but unable to deny the importance of what she was doing. Ethan, on the other hand, could barely stand being in the same room as Emily. He threw himself into the work, using his knowledge of law to review the documents Emily had compiled. He hated every second he spent near her, but he knew that, as an aspiring lawyer, he could ensure the evidence was used effectively. Lily, perhaps the most open to giving her mother a second chance, helped Emily stay focused. Despite her own pain, she saw in Emily a broken woman trying to piece together what remained of her life. "Do you think he'll try to find you?" Lily asked one evening as she helped her mother organize the files. Emily sighed, her tired eyes reflecting the fear that never fully went away. "Parker won't give up easily. He's dangerous, Lily, but I'm ready to face him. I won't let him control me anymore." Meanwhile, Jack worked to protect the family from the fallout of exposing Parker. He knew the authorities would need time to act, and Parker wasn't the kind of man to sit idly by. Jack reinforced the house's security, changed their routines, and warned the kids to be cautious. But the internal conflict everyone faced was almost as devastating as the external threats. Jack struggled with Emily's presence, a constant reminder of his pain and betrayal. Ethan fought against the anger he felt, wanting to believe his mother truly wanted to change, but unable to let go of the years of abandonment. And Lily wavered between hope that Emily could redeem herself and fear that it was all another disappointment waiting to happen. One night, while reviewing documents in Jack's small office, Emily looked at Ethan. "I know you hate me," she said, her voice low and hesitant. Ethan stared at her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I don't hate you," he finally said. "I just don't know if I can forgive you." Those words echoed in Emily's mind for hours. She knew it was the most she could hope for from him, but that didn't make it hurt any less. Each day was a reminder of everything she had lost, and every conversation with Jack, Ethan, or Lily reinforced the mountain of mistakes she would have to climb to repair even a fraction of the damage she had caused. When they finally handed over the evidence to the authorities, the atmosphere in the house shifted. There was a mix of relief and apprehension. Jack knew that with the evidence in police hands, Parker would soon realize Emily was working against him. The tension hung over the family, but there was also a sense of purpose, as if they were finally fighting back against the man who had caused them so much pain. For Emily, however, the hardest battle wasn't against Parker. It was against the look in Jack's eyes, the cold distance from Ethan, and the constant effort from Lily to keep the peace. She knew that even if Parker was brought to justice, the emotional scars would remain. What she didn't know was whether there would ever be room for anything beyond the pain. With the evidence against Parker handed over to the authorities and Emily's collaboration underway, the Thompson family began to navigate a new chapter in their lives. It was a time of uncertainty, but also one of opportunities to rebuild what once seemed irreparable. Jack, Ethan, and Lily had to find ways to move forward, even though the emotional scars remained fresh. Jack felt the weight of his role as the family's sole pillar gradually lifting. For years, he had carried the responsibility of being everything to Ethan and Lily: father, mother, protector, and friend. Now, with his children maturing and gaining independence, he began to see himself beyond the pain that had defined his life since Emily's death. Letting go of the trauma wasn't easy. Every room in the house still carried memories of Emily, both good and bad. Yet Jack discovered a sense of freedom in reclaiming control of his own dreams. He started devoting more time to himself, something he hadn't done since the tragedy. Jack had always been passionate about woodworking, a hobby that had lain dormant for years. He transformed the garage into a small workshop where he spent hours crafting furniture and decorative pieces. Before long, he began selling his creations, attracting orders from neighbors and acquaintances. Working with wood brought Jack a peace he hadn't felt in years. The rhythmic motion, the sound of the saw cutting through wood, and the scent of raw material helped him process emotions he had long suppressed. But Jack's greatest comfort was watching Ethan and Lily grow into their own paths. Despite everything, they were beginning to carve out meaningful, independent lives. Lily, in particular, found purpose in her pursuit of justice. After years of grappling with her mother's abandonment and the ripple effects it had on her life, she decided to channel her frustration into something constructive. Inspired by her family's ordeal, Lily became passionate about the work of NGOs that supported victims of financial and emotional crimes. Using her artistic talent, she created visual campaigns that highlighted the devastating impact of such crimes on families. Her illustrations were vibrant and striking, capturing not only the pain but also the resilience of survivors. One of her most praised works depicted a woman holding the shattered fragments of a heart, her expression one of determination. It was a clear reflection of Lily's own journey, a metaphor for rebuilding what had been broken. Lily's campaigns quickly gained attention from activists and larger organizations. She was invited to speak at community events, sharing her story and explaining how art could be a powerful tool for change. For Jack, seeing Lily transform into such a strong and determined young woman was a source of pride, even though he knew the wounds caused by Emily's absence would never fully heal. Ethan, on the other hand, immersed himself in his career as a lawyer. After reviewing Emily's evidence against Parker, he realized he had a knack for handling complex legal issues. Working on those documents not only reinforced his passion for justice, but also gave him a productive outlet for his anger. He decided to specialize in cases involving financial crimes, determined to help other families who had experienced what his own had endured. Despite his initial coldness toward Emily, Ethan used the lessons from his past to drive his actions in court. Each case felt like an opportunity to right some of the wrongs Parker and Emily had committed. His reputation as a lawyer grew quickly, earning him the respect of colleagues and clients alike. In one particularly challenging case, Ethan represented a family who had lost their life savings in a fraudulent scheme tied to Parker's network. During the trial, Ethan drew on his personal experience to connect with the clients, showing genuine empathy and understanding. When the verdict was favorable, Ethan felt for the first time a sense of fulfillment that went beyond the anger he felt toward his mother. He realized he could transform his pain into something positive, helping others find justice and closure. Jack watched his children's growth with a mix of pride and melancholy. He knew Ethan and Lily were becoming incredible adults, but he also saw the cost their family's story had exacted on them. Even so, their strength gave him hope that the future could be brighter. At the same time, Jack began to consider the possibility of a new beginning in his own personal life. For a long time, he had isolated himself emotionally, believing he couldn't love again. However, through a community support group for victims of financial crimes, he met someone who made him reconsider. Sarah was a kind and understanding woman who had faced similar challenges in her life. They started talking, first as friends, but the connection grew in unexpected ways. Jack wasn't in a hurry. He knew he was still healing, and Sarah understood that. But for the first time in years, he felt it was possible to look toward the future with optimism. He began to see himself not just as a father or a husband defined by loss, but as a man with dreams, skills, and the capacity to build a new life. Meanwhile, Emily, still awaiting her trial, kept her distance from the family to give Jack, Ethan, and Lily space. Living in a small apartment nearby, she focused on reflecting on her choices and finding ways to atone for what she had done. She knew she might never regain her children's love or Jack's respect, but she was determined to use what time she had left to make amends in any way possible. For Jack, Ethan, and Lily, overcoming the shadows cast by Emily and Parker was a gradual process. The past couldn't be erased, but each of them found their own ways to move forward. Jack rediscovered his passion, Lily found purpose through her art, and Ethan turned his pain into a career that made a difference. Though the memories still lingered, the Thompson family learned that survival wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about finding a way to keep going, despite it all. When the authorities began acting on the evidence Emily had provided against James Parker, he quickly realized something was wrong. A man as cunning and meticulous as Parker had little trouble connecting the dots and recognizing that Emily had betrayed him. Known for his silent brutality and ruthless methods, Parker wasted no time in responding. He sent a clear, threatening message directed at Emily and her family. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Jack found an unmarked envelope taped to his front door. Inside was a single photograph, Lily walking alone down a street, returning from a community event the previous evening. Alongside the photo was a brief note. "Take care of her, Jack. You know I can reach any of you at any time." Jack felt his blood run cold as he read the words. His mind raced back to the years Emily had disappeared, believing she was protecting the family from Parker. He immediately called Emily, his voice rough with frustration and fear. "He's watching us. This is exactly what you said you wanted to avoid. And now we're here, being threatened again." Emily arrived at Jack's house within minutes, her concern written plainly across her face. She knew Parker was capable of following through on any threat he made. "He's trying to intimidate us," she said, her voice steady but tense. "This means he's scared, Jack. He knows we're close to dismantling everything." Jack wasn't convinced. "At what cost, Emily? Lily's life, Ethan's. Parker has already stolen so much from us. I don't know if this is worth the risk anymore." As Jack and Emily argued, Ethan entered the room, drawn by their raised voices. Seeing the photograph on the table, he immediately grasped the situation. "So he's threatening us," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. "That was expected. Parker wasn't going to go down without a fight." Jack turned to his son, alarmed by his composed reaction. "Expected? Ethan, we're talking about your sister's safety here." Ethan crossed his arms, his expression unyielding. "I know, Dad, but letting fear stop us isn't an option. If we back down now, Parker wins, and he'll keep hurting other families." Lily entered shortly after, having been informed of the situation by Ethan. When she saw the photo, her initial reaction was indignation. "He thinks he can scare us, that this will make me back down." Her determination was striking, though it worried Jack. He knew her courage was genuine, but he also understood the danger Parker posed. In the days that followed, the tension in the Thompson household was palpable. Jack reinforced the house's security, installing cameras and asking his children to alter their daily routines to avoid predictable patterns. Meanwhile, Emily intensified her cooperation with the authorities, providing more documents and helping build a watertight case against Parker. But Parker didn't stop at threats. He began targeting individuals who could testify against him. One of the key witnesses, an accountant who had agreed to cooperate, mysteriously disappeared. The police found his abandoned car on a remote road, but there was no sign of the man. The disappearance created a sense of urgency among everyone involved in the case, including Emily and the Thompsons. Amid the escalating tension, Emily made a bold decision. She knew Parker still had a secret hideout where he kept records of his most incriminating operations. It was a secluded property outside a small town, a place only she and Parker knew about. Emily suggested to the authorities that she lead a team there to recover the documents, which could be the final piece to bring him down. Jack was furious when he learned of the plan. "You're insane. This is suicide, Emily. You think Parker doesn't know you might go there? He's probably waiting for you." Emily was resolute. "It's the only way to ensure he's taken down, Jack. Without these records, he might still have a way out." The argument was heated. Jack knew Emily was right about the importance of the evidence, but the thought of her putting herself in such grave danger was unbearable. The surprise came from Lily, who spoke up with unexpected determination. "I'll go with her," Lily said firmly. Jack nearly lost his composure. "You're not going anywhere, Lily. This isn't an adventure. It's dangerous." But Lily stood her ground. "I'm not going to sit here while everyone else makes sacrifices for our family. I know it's risky, but if this helps bring Parker down, it's worth it. And maybe it will help me understand her better." Ethan, who had been observing quietly, finally spoke. "If she's going, I'm going too. And so are you, Dad. Parker has stolen enough from us. We can't let him control us anymore. We face this together, as a family." Reluctantly, Jack realized his children were resolute. He couldn't protect them forever, and perhaps facing Parker together was the only way to truly move past his shadow. After much discussion, they agreed that Emily would lead the operation with the authorities, but Jack, Ethan, and Lily would accompany her under strict security. The decision brought a mix of fear and determination to everyone involved. Jack worried about what might happen, but he also felt this was a chance to finally confront the man who had destroyed so much of their lives. Lily, though scared, was eager to prove herself. Ethan, ever rational, knew preparation would be the key to success. In the days leading up to the operation, the family worked together to prepare. Emily spent hours coordinating every detail with the agents, while Jack and Ethan ensured everyone would be as safe as possible. For Lily, these moments were a reminder of how her family, despite everything, could still stand united. On the morning of the operation, the air was heavy with anticipation. Everyone understood the stakes. This wasn't just about taking down Parker, it was about confronting the past and testing the bonds that still held them together as a family. Before they left, Emily turned to Jack. "Thank you for trusting me even after everything." Jack shook his head. "I don't trust you, Emily. I trust our kids, and for them I'll do whatever it takes." The mission was about to begin, marking the most critical moment in their fight against Parker and the shadows he had cast over their lives. The night was heavy with tension as Emily and the FBI agents arrived at the remote location where Parker kept his most incriminating records. Jack, Ethan, and Lily waited in a support vehicle, observing from a safe distance. Despite the presence of heavily armed officers and a meticulously crafted plan, no one felt at ease. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow more ominous. Emily carried the weight of responsibility as her steady steps took her closer to either Parker's downfall or another one of his deadly traps. The property was a decaying mansion surrounded by towering trees that blocked any outside view. True to Parker's meticulous nature, it was the perfect place to hide secrets. The agents surrounded the house as Emily, accompanied by 2 officers, approached the entrance. Over the radio, the operation leader reported no signs of movement inside, but no one truly believed Parker would be unprepared. When the door creaked open, the scene inside was both chilling and triumphant. A room filled with files, computers, and hard drives. The agents quickly began collecting evidence, snapping photographs and cataloging items. Emily moved cautiously, her eyes scanning for something specific. She knew Parker wouldn't leave such a place unprotected. Her instincts were right. Minutes later, one of the agents uncovered a hidden security system that sent alerts directly to Parker. He now knew they were there, and his response wouldn't take long. The operation leader urged everyone to speed up the process. The tension mounted with each passing second. In the support vehicle, Jack gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, a voice reporting movement on the access road. "He's coming," Ethan said, his tone grim but composed. Jack pressed his lips into a hard line, while Lily looked toward the house with a mix of fear and resolve. They need to get out of there now. But Emily wasn't ready to leave. She knew there was something crucial still missing. "He always hides the most important things where no one thinks to look," she told an agent. Moving toward an old fireplace, she dislodged a loose wooden panel, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a collection of folders containing documents that could utterly destroy Parker. That was when Parker arrived. The screech of tires on the gravel driveway shattered the night stillness, and everyone inside the mansion tensed. The agents took defensive positions, and Emily's pulse quickened. Outside, Jack, Ethan, and Lily watched as Parker stepped out of a sleek black car, flanked by 2 men. He looked calm, almost smug, as though he was still in control. "You have something that belongs to me," Parker said, his voice steady and menacing. "I suggest you hand it over before things get worse." The operation leader demanded that Parker and his men surrender, but Parker simply smirked, signaling his associates to draw their weapons. A fierce firefight erupted, the sound of gunfire echoing through the forest. Jack instinctively pulled Lily to the ground, shielding her as Ethan stared toward the house, his eyes locked on the unfolding chaos. Inside the mansion, Emily knew it was time to leave. The documents were secured, but the risk of staying was too great. With the agents providing cover, she bolted toward the exit, the heat of the gunfire following her through the doorway. Outside, Parker spotted her and shouted something unintelligible, but he was too late to stop her. When the gunfire finally ceased, Parker and his men were subdued by the remaining agents. Handcuffed and defeated, His air of superiority was replaced with a dark glare. Emily stood a short distance away, watching as the man who had destroyed so many lives was finally taken into custody. "You think this ends here?" Parker sneered, a crooked smile spreading across his face. "My reach goes beyond me. You'll never be safe." Emily didn't flinch. She knew this was the end for Parker, even if remnants of his influence lingered. He would be exposed, and his criminal network dismantled piece by piece. The trial of James Parker began weeks later, becoming a media spectacle. Emily's role as a key witness drew national attention. Jack, Ethan, and Lily sat in the audience, each coping with the moment in their own way. Jack's face was tense, as if every word spoken reopened old wounds. Ethan, ever analytical, observed every detail of the proceedings, while Lily watched her mother on the witness stand, holding back tears. During her testimony, Emily laid everything bare. She spoke of Parker's threats, how he coerced her into his schemes, and how she had ultimately participated in the destruction of other families. Her words were devastating, not only for Parker's case, but also for herself. Each admission was a painful reminder of the choices that had led to the collapse of her own family. The prosecution used the evidence Emily had provided to dismantle Parker's defense. The financial records, fraudulent contracts, and incriminating correspondence left no doubt about his guilt. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before delivering their verdict, guilty on all counts. Parker was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His once untouchable empire crumbled before the eyes of the public. Emily, however, faced her own reckoning. While her cooperation had been crucial in bringing Parker to justice, she was still held accountable for her role in his crimes. During her sentencing, she stood without attempting to excuse herself. "I made choices that hurt the people I love, and countless others I never met. I'm here to face the consequences of those choices," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. The court considered her cooperation and the risk she had taken to expose Parker, sentencing her to 8 years in prison. For Emily, it was a fair price to pay. She knew she couldn't undo the past, but she hoped her actions might help build a better future for her family. As Emily was led away in custody, Lily, Ethan, and Jack watched from afar. Lily cried quietly, while Ethan maintained a stoic expression, though his eyes glistened with unspoken emotion. Jack felt a mix of relief and sadness. The cycle of destruction Parker had set in motion was finally over, but the scars he left behind would linger. Emily turned to look at them one last time before disappearing behind the courthouse doors. She accepted her fate, holding on to the hope that one day her children might find it in their hearts to fully forgive her. Emily's sentencing marked the end of a turbulent chapter in the Thompson family's lives, but also the beginning of a new one. As she began serving her sentence in a federal prison, Jack, Ethan, and Lily faced the challenge of rebuilding their lives once more. This time, with the shadow of Emily's betrayal fully exposed. Her imprisonment brought a mix of relief and sorrow. For Jack, it was confirmation that even those closest to us can fracture the foundations of trust and love. But it also offered a chance to move forward without the lingering weight of unresolved betrayal. In the days following the trial, the house felt different. It wasn't just the silence, it was the way each family member coped with the emotions left behind. Jack spent long hours in his workshop, meticulously crafting wooden pieces that not only distracted him but also helped him process everything they had endured. One day, as he sanded a frame for a mirror, he paused and looked at his calloused hands. Beneath the layers of exhaustion and pain, he realized he possessed a strength he hadn't known before Emily's departure. Reflecting on the past 6 years, Jack saw that despite the hardships, he had raised 2 resilient, remarkable children. Lily, with her fierce determination and empathy, had shown the world how pain could be transformed into purpose. Ethan, with his discipline and intellect, had emerged as a figure of justice and compassion, channeling his anger into actions that made a real difference. For Jack, their growth was his greatest achievement, the result of years of sacrifice and unwavering love. Lily, meanwhile, found solace in her art. After the trial, she delved even deeper into her work, focusing on themes of resilience and transformation. Her pain regarding her mother was still raw, but occasional visits to the prison allowed Lily to begin seeing Emily as a complex person, rather than just the mother who had let her down. During one such visit, Lily brought a painting for Emily. It was a stunning piece with vivid colors erupting into abstract shapes. "What does this mean?" Emily asked, her gaze curious. "It's what I feel when I think of you," Lily replied, a mix of anger, sadness, love, and hope. "I don't know if those colors will ever separate, but they're here, and I've decided to accept that." Emily held the painting as if it were precious. For the first time in years, she smiled sincerely. "Thank you, Lily. I don't deserve this, but thank you." While there was still a gulf between them, that moment served as a bridge, a small step towards something more human. Ethan, on the other hand, avoided visiting his mother. He buried himself in work, taking on an increasing load of complex cases. His determination to help other families find justice earned him respect in his field, but also left him emotionally isolated. One day, while he was poring over files at his desk, Jack walked into his office. "Ethan," Jack said, sitting across from him, "you've been doing incredible work. I'm so proud of you. But when was the last time you stopped to breathe?" Ethan looked up, surprised. "I can't stop, Dad. There are so many people who need help." Jack nodded but pressed on. "I understand, but you need help too, Ethan. You can't keep carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." Jack's words lingered with Ethan for days. He realized that while he had been helping others, he hadn't yet learned to forgive himself or find peace in his own story. Eventually, he decided to visit his mother, something he had avoided since her sentencing. In the sterile prison visiting room, Ethan and Emily sat across from each other. She looked smaller, wearier, but her eyes still held the sharp intelligence he remembered. "I didn't know if you'd come," she said hesitantly. Ethan exhaled deeply. "I didn't know if I would either, but I realized I need to understand who you are to figure out who I am." They talked for hours. Though their conversation didn't erase Ethan's pain, it opened the door to a necessary dialogue. Emily acknowledged her mistakes and the impact they had on Ethan's life. "I know I'll never get back the time I lost with you," she said, "but if there's anything I can do to help you move forward, I'll do it." That conversation marked the beginning of Ethan's own transformation. He began to see his pursuit of justice not just as a response to pain, but as a way to build something positive for others and for himself. Jack, too, experienced a personal turning point. After years of emotional isolation, he allowed himself to open his heart to Sarah, the woman he'd met in the support group. Gradually, their relationship deepened, bringing Jack a renewed sense of hope. Sarah didn't try to replace Emily, but brought a lightness to Jack's life that he hadn't felt in years. One sunny afternoon, as Jack worked on a rocking chair for the patio, Sarah approached with 2 cups of coffee. "You know," she said, handing him a cup, "I see so much in your eyes. Pain, yes, but also an incredible capacity to keep moving forward. It's inspiring." Jack smiled, something he found himself doing more often now. "I didn't do it alone. My kids taught me what resilience really means." The Thompson family never returned to what they once were, but they found a new way to exist. Jack, Ethan, and Lily gathered regularly for dinners and moments together, learning to laugh again, creating new traditions, and embracing the changes life had brought. The scars of their past remained, but they no longer defined who they were. Emily, meanwhile, continued her journey of reflection and redemption. She participated in educational programs in prison, using her experiences to help other women find paths to change. Though she knew she might never fully regain her family's love, she committed herself to becoming a better person. In the end, the Thompson family's story didn't have a perfect, happy ending, but it was a satisfying one. They had faced the truth, no matter how painful, and used it as a foundation to rebuild. The message at the core of their lives was clear: love can survive devastation, but it is truth, no matter how dark, that makes rebuilding possible. As Jack, Ethan, and Lily moved forward, each carrying their scars, they also found strength in the bonds that remained and the hope that the future could be kinder than the past. Would you be able to forgive someone who destroyed your life but is now trying to make amends? Share your thoughts and let us know what you would do in this situation. Here's a recap of our last story. After a devastating accident that nearly cost him his life and left him paralyzed from the waist down, Brian's world crumbled when Mary, his wife, forged his signatures to steal everything he owned and forced him out of their home. Left with no resources and no direction, he found shelter and support in Linda, his housekeeper, who risked everything to help him. But the path they took together unveiled unexpected challenges, cruel betrayals, and an intense fight for justice that would change their lives forever. Click on the video appearing on your screen now and dive into another shocking story. See you there.